Was it?
All right, it is 6:01, and I will now call to order the August 24th, 2015 meeting of the Easthampton Conservation Commission. The meeting is being recorded. Given the number of people here, we're going to go out of order. And actually, I will ask our Fran and Pam Anglin.
It's Frank, but that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
It didn't. My apologies.
Well,
your discussion's under general business, and
yeah,
we'd like to take care of that first,
yeah,
if
that
we
sounds
could.
good. Okay.
So,
we were just wanting to expand our deck, and so I think there was, you guys were
There's an
given
issue with
blueprints.
stormwater drainage you were gonna check on last time we were here.
So there's on the plans for that subdivision, there's a swale-ish feature in the backyards that was graded and was labeled on the plans as part of the drainage easement. So basically, when a project comes before the Conservation Commission and it's a subdivision with more than 4 lots, which you are in, it's subject to the stormwater management standards, and it has to meet certain standards so that the development doesn't affect down gradient resource areas, adjacent properties, things of that nature, with the increase in runoff. Part of the design was that the backyards on the north side of Hall Street Extension be graded in such a way that it conveyed water perpendicular to the tree line. And so I guess we need to understand if what you're proposing is more than 50 feet from the flagged wetland boundary that was delineated to be exempt. If it's more than 50 feet in your yard, away from the wetland boundary, and where it falls relative to that graded area. So, can someone grab that?
There was supposed to be blueprints.
Thank you.
We look at them last week.
We did, so they should be kind of on top.
So we talked to the city engineer too, about the easement. He wasn't actually sure if it was something that the city was responsible for, or if it was just like on the deeds of those parcels with restrictions for it. 'Cause, you know, it seemed more like it's, the easement on your property is for the benefit of your neighbors, just to make sure that they have appropriate drainage, basically.
So, could you just, for the sake of discussion right now, point out are you lot 4 or 3? Or neither?
Yeah, we're in lot 4.
Okay, so do you see this dark loopy contour here? That's the grading. So the light line or dash lines here were the existing grades before the subdivision was constructed, and then the dark lines show how they were modifying grades to accommodate
these
building.
back in here?
That's natural.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
natural
So these,
slope.
so these basically create a depression in the back of all these homes, so the drainage can come off and then filter down here to.
Yeah, I mean, right here this is I
That's
think
the
owned by the
city's
city.
easement
Yeah.
for their subsurface.
Yeah, I mean, it
infiltration.
all kind of slopes this way,
Mhm.
and
Yep.
then right there.
Yep.
So, the concern is that
I mean, we're talking 5 feet.
your deck would be 5 feet wide?
It's
Or-
already
5
existing.
feet more.
Okay.
This was the stakes that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, from here to here.
Okay. Thank you for that. That's very helpful.
Yeah, that's helpful, more of a visual, isn't it?
Yes, well, especially since this was
Already.
this was a somewhat generic footprint, and this is obviously very specific. So,
I don't see the flags in the photo.
well, you wouldn't see the
Flags are way back
Way
in the
back.
The
woods.
flagging is
Yeah.
way down
so
slope,
that's-
and the tree line is, so this tree line is what is
Yeah.
shown there.
Okay.
This is
So you most
100-foot
certainly-
buffer here, right?
Mhm. What's the scale on this? Can you see?
1 inch equals 20.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably more
So they're definitely more than 50 feet away from the wetland.
Okay. So,
20. Yeah.
so that could make it an exempt activity.
Right, yeah, so it could be an exempt activity. from the
Provided.
Provided.
that that's not a functional part of the design of the stormwater system.
Right. You know, or if there was a restriction on the deed that said that you couldn't do it. And that,
And I didn't see a deed restriction.
yeah, I mean, that's kind of out of our purview to some
It is.
extent, but,
So I'm gonna give Chris a citation here.
Alright,
Ready?
now, can I just go back 1 second? So,
Sure,
you
I'll
said the
give time to find
commission
it.
talked to the city engineer and he was not clear as to who held the drainage easement, is that correct?
yeah, he
City
wasn't,
was not.
he wasn't sure if the, well, I guess he wasn't aware of it. So, which leads me to believe that the city's not responsible for it. So then it would just be, you know, something in, something for the benefit of the other, property owners.
Okay. And there's no restrictions in the deed, is that what you're saying, that's on,
There's nothing about a drainage easement in the deed,
If there even
or
is
the
a,
plan book, the recorded plan.
okay,
I seem to
But
recall.
there, this is the city's parcel, the city's easement here is on the recorded plan.
understood. And the work, the proposed work is more than 50 feet away from the wetland flags?
Within a landscape lawn
The proposed work is
area. More than 50 feet.
more than 50 feet,
And
yep, the wetland flags, and within the landscaping area, okay?
Per
Yep,
310
Yep.
CMR,
Mhm.
10.02, parentheses, 2, parentheses.
I love it, actually, it makes
B
me,
is in parentheses as well.
okay,
lowercase b.
small b,
2, again,
parentheses,
Ken,
yep,
E.
yep,
The construction of a deck at this location would be considered an exempt minor activity in buffer zone.
would you like?
Considered an exempt minor activity in buffer
Okay.
zone.
Yep,
You could also mention that that easement that we've been talking about isn't actually shown on the drawings that we have.
Isn't shown on the final
Yeah,
approved drawing, okay.
yeah, so I don't,
So
I
as
know
long
I've
as
seen it
there's
on
no
the
change in
drawing.
grading,
Yeah.
it shouldn't adversely affect.
and you don't propose to do any changing to the grading, it's just putting in the posts?
Correct.
So,
The-
yeah.
Okay,
All right,
Yeah.
so we have it in our minutes. If you need a building permit, we have to sign off, I have to sign off on the cover sheet, but we can do that by email.
so you're all
So we're all
set?
Okay, appreciate it,
And
thank you.
did you sign in?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you both for
All right,
your time.
Thanks, thanks for coming
Thank you
back.
very much. Oh, yes. Has anyone not signed the sign-in sheet? Anyone at all not signed the sign-in sheet?
There are 2 open seats up front if anyone wants them. Okay, can we? Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. All right, next item we will discuss, 125 Northampton Street area, multiple parcels, Bernard Gall owner. Discussion of August 17th, 2015 site visit. Conservation Commission performed a site visit regarding potential Wetlands Protection Act violations on the evening of August 17th. All commission members, with the exception of Jessica Harwood, were present. So we were, everyone except you was there to see it with their own eyes. For the file sake and for the sake of discussion, I prepared a quick summary. I guess we'll just basically do this. To recap, in case anyone wasn't here, commission members, Bernard Gall and Jim Gracia, the city engineer, were on site. Commission members walked the limits of the parcels, viewed the areas of disturbance and the existing tree line, and into the existing tree line to see if we could observe any jurisdictional wetland resource areas that would have a buffer zone associated with them that would extend into any area that had been disturbed or the field in general. We did not observe any such areas with the exception of a drainage channel which at some point into the tree line intersects with more than 50% wetland vegetation. So from that point on, it would appear, though we did not make a formal determination, that that drainage channel would then become a jurisdictional intermittent stream. It was not flowing at the time of the site visit. Based on discussion with Mr. Gall and the nature of disturbance we observed, we understand that he has been haying the field, or that the field has been hayed on his behalf. That would make this land and agricultural use. He had seeded the area with a mixture of, what did I note? Timothy, tall fescue, red and white clovers, and Kentucky rye. He showed us these bags of seed after we asked when we saw the fresh seed on the ground. So there are a few things to note here. One, we did not observe, for the majority of the parcel, an area subject to Wetlands Protection Act jurisdiction. Also, his activities appear to be consistent with normal maintenance and improvement of land and agricultural use, which is exempt from the Wetlands Protection Act. So at this time, we did not observe any violations of the Wetlands Protection Act. The city's stormwater protection ordinance also includes an exemption for agricultural activities. And so at this time, it's not in violation of the city's stormwater protection ordinance. Does anyone else have observations they'd like to add? Discussion?
It's pretty straightforward.
I have a question about the mounds of debris there.
Mhm.
Was there any discussion? I had to leave early, so I don't know what was happening with that. Was there a discussion that he has as an agricultural use, he has the authority to have those?
Well, the ones you're talking about in particular are at the easterly end of that field behind the access that he cleared through the parcel he owns off Highland Avenue. Based on what I saw into the tree line, it wouldn't, even if it were within our jurisdiction, it would be non-jurisdictional, or it'd be exempt.
Mm-hmm.
But that area does not appear to be within 100 feet of
Okay.
a wetland resource area.
Okay. You had also asked Mr. Gall to provide the person who is haying the field.
And we're still waiting on that, so we need to keep that open.
Okay.
Can we talk about the agricultural exemptions a little bit?
Sure.
So, I mean, I guess it seems like the, you know, and what Mr. Gall, I recall him stating, is that he had been working to reclaim parts of the field to its former edges, you know, which, I don't know, may or may not be an expansion of that agricultural use. And I guess I was wondering how the Wetland Protection Act defines lands and agricultural use relative to field edges and access and that kind of thing. Just because, you know, the stormwater ordinance has a acre of disturbance threshold, except for lands and agricultural use. I would, you know, not that we really know what is disturbed now versus what, you know, what wasn't disturbed previously. You know, but I guess I'd be interested in at least understanding if the expansion would be subject to that exemption or not.
So it would depend. And there is a guidance document that I didn't bring a copy of, but the regulations include existing maintenance of existing forest boundary lines up to 5 feet wide, limited to cutting vegetation. So he is allowed, an agricultural use is allowed to maintain the field margins, essentially. So if that perimeter is not actively producing a crop or directly supporting a pasture or something like that, the farmer is allowed to keep it from having the forest encroach upon it, as successional species would grow in.
So I mean, all we're looking at here basically is at some future point when we have new aerial photos or something like that, you know, we can look and compare, you know, pre and post field area and try to see, you know, what the expansion of that cleared area may have been. Yeah.
Although, if you're talking about that specific area, we're at the height of the growing season, and Colleen, did you observe anything that would make you think there was a wetland?
Well, I'm talking about
before?
stormwater.
Okay.
Yeah, and that exemption, the exemption is applies to stormwater. Yeah.
So,
Right, so that wet
Yeah.
spot was not a wetland, it was not in our jurisdiction, it was not a wetland, the wet area that was in the field.
right, there's a low area, that at the time still had some water puddled in it. But I should have looked it up, but I don't have the precipitation data for when the most recent rainfall was.
It was like that Saturday. Saturday night.
It was Saturday, it was a
So-
strong storm on the Saturday prior, and this was the Monday
Yeah.
following.
This is Monday,
So can you note that in the minutes for us?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I have a question about something you're touching upon.
Mhm.
So how do you know the boundaries of an agricultural use area? Like, is his entire parcel considered agricultural
No.
use, or is it just what is
It's just what is actively
even?
being used to support agriculture. So, if you wanna look at it for this, I'm looking at the 200 scale aerial parcel map from the city's mapping Chris. So, the parcel we're talking about is this parcel. At the moment, the parcel we're talking about is this oddly shaped one. The limit of land and agriculture, I wanna write on this because I don't wanna print it again. The limit of land and agricultural use plus or minus is this cleared area.
Yeah, the open,
And I would
cleared
go around that as well.
around the trees, yeah.
Same here. It's the open cleared area,
Mm-hmm,
well, in this accessory building.
mm-hmm.
So
If anything that's cleared currently, that's,
right,
we've been told is being hayed.
right, so if, and I think this is what you were getting to, if land outside those limits were to be altered for agricultural purposes, as in creating or restoring decades-old agricultural land, it would not be afforded those same exemptions.
Right,
Right.
because it hasn't been hayed in the last 5 years, or hasn't been used as
Right,
agricultural land in the
if it's
past 5
been
years.
fallow for more than 5 years, the exemptions and the designation as land and agricultural use do not apply.
Right,
You know, but by the same token, the edges of the area, you know, where he'd been doing work were pretty tidy, you know, we didn't see any sign of, you know, offsite. I didn't see any sign of offsite migration of
Mhm.
soil or anything like that.
Right. Agreed.
no, I didn't see any migration of offsite soil at all.
Yeah.
So where do the mounds of soil come from?
Mounds of soil are just from him basically clearing
down
the
on the
land
margins,
Mhm.
regrading.
Well,
and
yeah, that's
reseeding it.
mechanized migration of soil.
Right, but not
Yeah.
off the site.
Exactly, yeah.
No, you're not.
Nothing
Yeah.
carried by stormwater that I saw.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
What's the distance from the body of water to where they're paying?
this is 1 inch equals 200 feet. So, 1 inch. So 200 feet is roughly here. Roughly. If we connected this point and this point diagonally, then very approximate. I just want to double check something for the sake of discussion before I remember. So worth noting for this and future agricultural discussions, the regulations only have a 100-foot riverfront area for new agricultural and aquacultural activities. So the 200-foot riverfront area that applies to any other site development is only 100 feet for agriculture.
So there's even less of a case for anything that's in our jurisdiction. Okay.
So with that, at this time, do you have anything they'd like to add?
No, we can open it.
All right, we'll now open it to public discussion, comment.
Hi.
You recognize yourself for the
Sure.
meeting.
Councilor Dan Hagan, represent Precinct 1 and most of these residents. And I don't want to take their time because I want them to all have opportunity to speak, but
What's your, you're a,
City Councilor Precinct 1, Hagan, H-A-G-A.
yep.
I just had one question. You seem to have made a thorough discussion of the plan, and I guess where I have a little problem is last Monday night when we were out there, Mr. Gall wouldn't let anybody other than the committee, Mr. Gracia, go on the property. In fact, Chris, I believe it's Chris, actually did leave early because I think one of the residents tried to show him some documents, and Chris's comment was, we can't discuss it tonight, that's all for next week. And I guess I'd like to know when you all, because you sent me, and I appreciated the decision about an hour ago before the meeting, so I guess I'd like to know when you all had this discussion outside the open meeting
We're
process.
having this discussion right now.
But you already had your decision, you sent it to me an hour ago.
No, I sent you my summary report, my findings.
But you just talked to the committee, and everybody, I think it was Jay, said, I agree wholeheartedly with what you said
So
when
he
you
was
read it.
agreeing with what I was
With
saying.
the report,
when
I've not seen the report
just
before.
presented
I've not
it.
seen the report either.
So you guys just said you had all sorts of discussion, so is this
No.
not your decision?
We
No.
haven't made a finding yet. This is my observations
From the site visit.
From the site
Written
visit for
comments
the
from the
file.
site visit.
with the photos that we took.
Right.
And you don't take any, if you personally, then I won't take the rest, as chair of the committee, you take no public comment before you make your decision?
This is a summary of my observations.
Right, it's not a decision.
So it's not your decision?
No.
Also, you still take comment?
We haven't made a motion. This in fact isn't even a public hearing or.
I know it's not a
meeting.
public hearing, it's a public meeting.
Public meeting,
Right.
but there's no application before us. We're, at this point in time, I summarized my observations for the
Any of us
members.
could have done the same.
Right.
We just didn't.
We didn't have anything to add, other than what was already said.
We've discussed implications of agricultural exemptions, what may or may not qualify, and now we're opening it up to public
Okay.
comment.
Yeah.
I'll stop at that point and let some of the others speak.
Hi, I'm attorney Dan Hagan Jr. I guess I just have a couple of questions about sort of your, I don't know, findings, decision, whatever it is. And it's specifically surrounding the wet spot or pond area that I think was one of the topics of most of the concern here of the residents.
The
And-
puddle?
Oh, yeah, the puddle,
Yeah, the
yes.
puddle.
But I guess my question is what evidence guides you to believe that what you saw out there on the site visit is the actual dimensions of that pond, because I believe it's a pond, that's existed under the wetlands rules for 10 years at a size of about 10,000 square feet. I mean, if I were to go fill in Ashwaubenon Pond right now, and you come in after the operation is over and say, "Whoa, gee, looks like an agricultural operation out here," but not consider what's happened in the past and what I think is overwhelming evidence of this pond being dramatically over 10,000 square feet. Last week, about a week and a half ago, I don't know how many of you have seen it, I sent to the commission satellite photographs from 2001 approximately onward.
We did not receive those.
Okay, I have to send emails, I'll
Okay.
provide them to you again if you like. But
Great.
satellite photos of that area, as well as the state which I know isn't conclusive of anything, but the state has a to-scale map of the open water, which was done from satellite photographs. And that shows it to scale well over 10,000 square feet. You'll see you'll see in the satellite photographs taken right up till I believe the most recent one, 2014. But in I think some of the 2008, I believe, is a very good one, a very large wet spot that is present on the map, which you can tell based on the lots sizes of the neighborhood is very close, if not well over 10,000 square feet. So you have to take a look at that. There's also the photographs that the neighbors have taken of operations surrounding that pond over the years. And I guess, and I don't know if
I think somebody else took.
Yeah, you want to speak to this, but you can see in some of these photographs digging operations, digging holes in the ground, which I don't know how that has to do with agriculture, but right in the vicinity of that pond. You'll see over the years in the satellite photographs, you'll see the pond which went from very large to slowly being reduced. So I guess that's my question, is how the, you know, and I guess I'd like, if you're going to make a decision tonight, I'd like to have some kind of written, some written findings in a decision that shows how you came to the conclusion that that is not a pond under the wetlands laws. Because I think it's right now, as it stands, I think it's arbitrary unless you look at this evidence, which is that the satellite photographs, what the state shows, what the neighbors have said. I mean, you have all these neighbors in the room. You're going to hear the testimony from them. This pond, there's been a pond there, not a little puddle of water, but there's been a pond there existing. Some of these neighbors have been here 30 years. 60 years. 60 years in some cases, right? That this is so. To walk it one day after an operation is over and to make findings, I think is unfortunate if that's what your decision would be rested on. So I hope that you would reconsider that, and let's hear from some of the other residents.
Well, actually, we're going to respond to you first, and we are going to set time limits because there are a fair number of you, and I'm sure you all have concerns you would like the opportunity to personally express. I think a lot of this is the crux of it, but we will go through this. We do recall, and we could go back to the meeting minutes from August, September 2013, I believe it was. And revisit our observations from our discussions from those meetings. If you would like to provide those aerial photos that you said, that would be.
Well, I don't have all the aerial photos here, but I can.
So first and foremost, thank you. You, in 2013 as well as recently, have made reference to the MassGIS DEP wetlands layer.
Yep.
MassGIS, for those who don't know, is Massachusetts Geographic Information System. It has a wide variety of data layers. The limitation/disclaimer associated with both the DEP wetlands change data layer and the DEP wetlands layer essentially says, as you mentioned, it's based on the interpretation of aerial photographs and digital aerial imagery. Because the changes represented, and this kind of applies to where wetlands are in general as well, on these maps have been determined solely through photo interpretation. They do not represent and should not be used as wetlands delineation under the Wetlands Protection Act and the implementing regulations. While aerial photography can be useful and reliable as a tool for ascertaining the existence, past, or presence of wetland resource areas, it is not a substitute for and should not be used in conjunction with should be used in conjunction, with appropriate ground survey observation. And I believe we had this conversation a couple of years ago as well. The MassGIS wetlands data layer is a very useful tool. It's not the same as an actual delineation. Aerial photographs in general are useful tools, especially as time passes and you need to revisit what something may have looked like at a previous year. One of the complicating factors of that very particular location is its proximity to a tall eastern white pine forest tree line and shadows that get cast. Mm-hmm. At best, going back through time, at best, going through aerial photos over time, and I've personally exhausted many resources trying to find different years, filling the gaps, going back as far as possible, and scaling off and measuring it. I did not come up with a darkened land image that exceeded 10,000 square feet, which is the definition of a pond, the minimum surface area for a pond,
I mean, here the state did in 2001,
which is
and
over
again
10
in
years ago.
2008, you see the same puddle, right there. So, I
You
mean,
see a dark area, and then if you go through time, it expands and contracts, expands and contracts. I can't,
well, here's 2008, there's
Sure.
within 10 years, there's a big dark spot in the same vicinity as this one.
Mhm.
And I guess my question is, if you can't rely on photographs, we can't rely on what the state says, which is based off a photograph that says to scale it's over 10,000 square feet, and you have resident testimony saying that it's well over 10,000 square feet, how could we ever prove that the pond existed over 10,000 square feet? As I said, if we went and covered Nashwanek Pond today, how could we show it? We could go to a satellite photo, we could go to people's, a
I'm gonna
witness.
stop you right there for a moment, because you're comparing apples and oranges. And you're asking this commission to make some very serious allegations against a property owner.
I'm not making any allegations against the property. What I'm saying is, here's the satellite photographs. You're making a finding that there's no pond. What I'm saying is, on what evidence? Based on just walking it a day after operations?
No, based on the observations that we made and the documents we reviewed 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
2 years ago,
August
the-
and
the
September
same-
2013, you were
the same
saying you
incident
were
came up.
here.
And there was a site visit that the commission held 2 years ago.
No, we did not do a site visit
No,
2 years ago.
you never went on the property. You never went on.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Right.
So, 2 years ago, the information we reviewed, excuse me, the information we reviewed, this, however, is a very clear image, but it's 1 year in, what year was this one? Could you help me? Where are you?
But there's images over time. That's 01, just to
There
show
are.
you where we started.
And before
Google-
01, you can find images where it's significantly smaller.
Well, depending on the seasons, again, you're talking like in the middle of the late summer and early fall, you see, like here, this is in, I believe, the fall of '08, so it's in drier conditions, so you don't see quite as large of a
So would
spot.
Nashwanek
but it's
Pond be
still-
significantly smaller in the middle of summer?
Well, I don't
Is
think
that
it's
what you're
significantly,
saying?
this isn't significantly smaller than that. I mean, that's still about approximately the same size. I'm saying in a dry year, you might get a little bit less, but I mean, it's still,
Mr. Buttrick, would you care to comment?
I guess I think this is a good discussion. In my own mind, if we're gonna enforce, if there's something to enforce, I feel like it's important to enforce it. But it's important that we have a good case for whatever we're gonna do. And so when we're talking about 10,000 square feet of a pond, that's the definition of a pond in the wetland. Is it in the act or in the regulations?
It's in the regulations, it's not defined as specifically.
I mean, so, and we've been talking about, different times of year, which all go to different, water levels. Is there a way to, like, what's that 10,000 square foot threshold correlate to, Is it, I would probably have to go to case law, unless it's defined there, to figure out what is really enforceable. Because if it's 10,000 square feet after you just got 2 inches of rain or 4 inches of rain, then that's different than if it's 10,000 square feet,
Right.
This time of year.
Right. So,
again, I'll sit down and let us talk. With the evidence, there is plenty of evidence on the side of saying, again, with the satellite photos, what the state has looked at, what resident observations, resident photographs. I guess that's all I'm saying, is that there is a lot of evidence. I'm not sure of the evidence on the other side, other than just one day walking out there after operations. So that's what I'm saying. If it was over 10,000 square feet, I'm not sure how you would know that by one day just walking through the site after work has been done and witnessed by residents.
Can I this is one resident who didn't want to speak, this was before this operation, and then it goes on to show at what we've done. Again, it doesn't show obviously the size of the pond, just what the land was before the, I don't know if any of you saw it.
I'm assuming this was taken with a telephoto.
Okay.
How long ago?
I didn't,
It's
I,
telephoto.
With the telephoto.
Telephoto lens.
All right.
Who's got the background picture?
So, while commission members are passing these around, sir, could you
Stephen Blanchard, 40 Highland Avenue. I gotta disagree with quite a few of your points that you read in your decision there, and yours directly saying you didn't see any something being brought into the property, and you ask about those mounds. Well,
I didn't get your name and address.
Stephen Blanchard, 40 Highland Ave.
Thank you, Stephen.
When Bernie started this, of course, he's been, and I want to go right back to what Dan was saying about the size of the pond. He's been filling in around that pond over years. And back in 2013, the team showed up in my backyard, and I have pictures that show what he did. He hasn't hayed that field in 5, 6, 7 years. He seeded it the other day when he got the notice that you guys were going to come walking. But all that pile of dirt that's there is all, yes, what he dug out. And I'll only explain to you what we witnessed because it's right in my backyard. He showed up, I actually think it was a Thursday probably 2 weeks ago. And you have those pictures?
Sure. I got yours, these are yours, Steve. Hang on, let me give you the color ones, Steve.
No, those aren't mine.
No, Steve's got some color ones.
Anyways, while they're trying to find it,
Right here.
I witnessed,
This is from Walls.
and yes, these were taken with a telephoto lens. I can supply the camera if you want. But here's this was just the start. And if you look, the tractor in these pictures, it's in the middle of the reeds. It's right in the middle of the pond. And what he was doing with his little measuring thing, he had his the surveying thing, and you can see what he's measuring. And I'm going to show you what he was measuring, why he was measuring it. This was later in the. Let me see if I can find that.
I don't know how many of them there are, Steve.
Well, anyways, I don't see the one that I really want to show you. I can pull it up on my.
Can you describe it?
Well, this is what it is. This he had gone home from the day and he dug a ditch in between, right through the reeds, and he dug it out to that dingle that goes down in the back. Okay, and then he came back the next day with his coworker, and he was prodding along to get to pitch it out. And then after he made the ditch, he brought stone from up in the front of the property with his big bulldozer, dumped it in, put plastic tubing in to shoot it out the side. That's why there isn't any water in there, why you didn't see any. But he has been closing that up, and he finally did it. But now, you say you didn't see any dirt. Well, we witnessed trucks coming out from his dump trucks, bringing dirt and dumping it in those big piles. But when he dug that dirt out here, once he made this trench, then he took all the reeds out, pulled all that soil out. That's what those mounds are. He would bring that wet soil out, and then he would go down to a pile that's down behind the right-of-way, bring a big bucket in, dump it up on top of it. And then he would bring soil that could drain well and dump it into that, and that's what he's done. So this contradicts everything that you guys think that you saw that you didn't see. We see it on a daily basis. And this is from 2013. Does that look like a field that's been hayed? And this is the edge of the woods here. He started doing that, and then he stopped once we said something and made a mention about it.
There's one of dumping fill in there too.
Well, he did, yeah. He started dumping fill. These are all pictures I took from my property. And a couple of members witnessed.
Can you pass them?
Sure.
Thank you.
There's one with the dump truck.
No, she's got it right there. No, there's no.
No, there's
the
not a
dumping
dump
right
truck
there.
in this one.
Why don't we have that
I
one?
didn't take pictures.
So this is 2013.
That was 2013. That was when we made he started doing this, and then he stopped once a mention was made.
So where's the pond where he's working? Or?
Well, what he did here originally is he made another drainage thing just to get the water out
So
of
this
there.
is after we put the rock in and all that?
No. This is 2013. This is either Saturday, Sunday. This was a week before you guys walked the property. He had already destroyed the pond. In fact, I sent Dan an email and said the pond's gone. It's been there. I've been on the street since '89. My kids skated on that back when it was the Flurry's property. We were allowed to go out there, and that pond was huge. And these pictures depict here. He started going around filling it in, pushing things in, but he hasn't hayed that field. He's not hayed that field. Prior to him saying in the last couple of years, there's a neighbor on the street that had horses. The horses ran up and down there. There was an electric fence in there.
There's the dump truck.
There's a clearer picture, but this is from 2013. This picture. There's soil that he brought from someplace else and dumped it in those big piles. So And him to tell you that he's hate that field, it's not true.
So I guess just to say, when I was talking about migration of soil, I was just talking about soil being carried off-site by the action of water. I didn't mean.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't mean, I mean.
Well,
clearly
see, those
there's
are a couple of
been
questions,
material
when I mentioned this stuff, that's what I want to know. Is it legal for him to dig a trench like that, put stone in it, put a plastic or flexible tubing, and drain it into that gully that's right on the other side of the, is that legal? Is it legal to bring soil from another area and dump it in there? Is it legal then to dig all that soil out and put soil that'll allow water to penetrate it so it doesn't gather, so it's not in the pond anymore? That's what we want to know. We want to know is what are you doing legal?
So if it was a pond, then no.
And if he discharged it to a resource area,
Then it would not be
then
legal
no,
as well. But
either.
so, how does the commission feel about bringing Western Region into this conversation? DEP Western Region?
Yeah, I mean,
Because we do not, I do see you and I do want to let you comment, thank you. I just don't want your arm to get tired.
I'm stretching it.
We are without sufficient resources to take on an investigatory burden such as this. I would be more than happy to, either the residents themselves could make as many phone calls to DEP Western Region regarding possible violations. But we simply don't have the resources to dig into what this might take.
Wouldn't it be better coming from you?
Not necessarily, I'm not in a butter. Abutters, you're the abutters, you're the ones with direct standing.
I talked to Mark
And-
Stinson, sorry, from the
I'm
West
sorry, there's a
Region.
gentleman
Oh,
waiting
sorry.
behind you.
Actually, I may have a bit of an answer for you on that. I'm Kenneth Bushy, 43 Highland Avenue. I have a map here. It shows priority habitat for rare species and estimated habitat of rare wildlife.
And-
I have contacted Tom French's office
Great.
from Natural Heritage. I work quite a bit with the Fish and Wildlife, and I know a lot of people. And, now, he has been on vacation, but I have talked with Jennifer from his office. She was supposed to contact you. Did anybody on the board get contacted by her?
There was an email from Lauren Glorioso.
Right, that's all
And
that's the only person.
I did not discuss this with her, and I understand, and it gets tricky with environmental regulations because there's an umbrella. The commission does not have authority under the Endangered Species Act. So
Right.
we cannot
Right.
make any comments about violations of MISA.
Yeah.
And then I let her know that we would be discussing this at our meeting tonight.
Yeah, I'll be
But that's where it
contacting
was.
Tom, Mr. French. He's
Great.
back the 3rd, so I'll be contacting him and we'll be looking more into this because
Great.
from the map, what I can see here, where he's come in and just talking briefly with her, we didn't get into a lot. Any work done, farm or not, along any of this habitat needs to be reviewed and it needs to be permitted. If you don't believe it, you can ask Mr. Pepin from Channel 22 who took this all the way to Superior Court and lost. So they will be involved with that. This drainage also, from what I can tell on this map, give or take, is close to draining it into this property, which is habitat, along with the Historical Society has been contacted on the deal with the canal there, because it is a historical area. I know people who have brought that to my attention a couple of years ago. So with that said, I do have one question. Listening to you earlier, you said in farm operations, you're allowed to clear a field with, reclaim a field. I do it all the time. I do landscaping. It says keep it open.
You can maintain your field margins.
Maintain margins. Okay, now, how does cutting large 30 to 60-year-old trees, removing the stumps and all the wood, how does that fit into maintaining when you've actually cut and I live right next door. I work my own hours, so I get to see an awful lot. I see him on Saturdays and Sundays. And one last comment. I mean, I guess my question to you right now is...
Can I clarify for the minutes?
Yeah.
Are you claiming that he was cutting down 30 to 60-year-old trees?
Well, a tree that goes 4 feet wide.
These minutes are going to be recorded.
Right, 3 feet wide.
Did he cut down a big tree?
Yes.
You witnessed? Okay.
I seen some of it and the roots that were there.
Okay, did you see roots or him cutting down a tree?
I've seen the cutting of the trees.
He did right next door to me.
Yeah. And some of the tree cutting was done along this path, this habitat. That's what I saw. I have not seen what's up above that he's done.
Again, just to, I
Yeah,
want to let you
should
finish,
say-
but I just want to make it perfectly clear, we have zero jurisdiction under the Endangered
Right.
Species Act, and that's
Right.
the habitat that's being discussed.
Yeah. So, I guess my question is, how does...
This was the picture that I wanted to show you guys.
Okay.
That's
Okay, we have to finish with
I
this.
wanna let
Okay.
Mr. Blanchard
You said he was maintaining,
Sorry, thank you.
I witnessed him going beyond what he was maintaining, that's what I'm trying to bring to you. I have seen it with tree cutting, we're not talking saplings of less than 5 years. I do landscaping. And it's my last question to anybody here is, who, at the operational costs of this equipment, would work for a month to do all this work for hay? I mean, how much do you get for a bale?
That's also not our...
I know, I'm
It's
just kind of bringing that up.
It's a worthy consideration, but thank you.
Melissa, could I sorry, she mentioned about the DEP Western branch, and I had talked to Mark Stinson. I actually think that would be a really good idea. What you suggested is I think the residents. I don't know about this. I'm just kind of speaking for myself here, but I think the residents would probably appreciate that idea of an investigation. I mean, we want what's fair. I mean, if he's doing things within the law, then that's fine. But I do think a more thorough investigation is really what the residents are looking for. And Mark Stinson, I just spoke to him, and he was very familiar with you and said that, and he said he was kind of looking for you to maybe reach out to him. He said after, because I talked to him before the site visit, that you he said you may be reaching out to him after. So I do think maybe coming from you would be just to kind of initiate some looking, by the state to see if there's no violation, there's no violation. But I mean, let's at least have a thorough investigation done and
Sure. And before we get to another comment, I want to pass this photo around so we can get his tablet back to him.
Is it still there?
Yes.
Just touch it, just touch the screen a little, just so it stays on, so.
Thank you.
So what are we looking at?
I think a big trench going through.
That's the start of, that was the start of what he did before he did everything else. He built that trench, filled it with, what you say, trap rock, pea stone, drainage stone, put a drainage pipe in, black plastic flexible tube, and then filled it over, and then he went to town.
So that drainage pipe is exposed at the other end?
I don't know, I haven't gone, I mean, you guys would have to go look at it, I can't, because I do a covert operation. And I myself want to reiterate what Dan said. I'm not in here for a witch hunt.
It was like 1 inch.
Do you recall, could you observe what size that pipe was?
That was probably 4 inches or more.
Okay, that's not what I saw. I mean, I did see flexible tubing in the woods, but it was no more than 1 inch in diameter, and it was it was liquid you'd use for irrigation.
Corrugated.
No, because this came down on a truck.
Yeah, this is not what I saw.
Can I
didn't see that either, I
The
wasn't-
moment to reflect. Could you?
Okay, I just want to finish with the photo. Share a photo of Mr. Gall, operations.
You got cramps tonight, Chris.
I know, to show, okay. Drainage trench, okay. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, yes ma'am.
I'm Chris Hagan, 24 Highland Ave. When you're looking into maybe how big this pond was, you might check public health records, because 30 years ago, they would come every summer, and a member of the Board of Public Health would come and throw mosquito pellets in. It was that big of a pond that they thought it was a public health hazard. And there were 2 ponds actually, and they must have records of that.
Well, yeah, well, we don't do that.
It's the irony of the situation,
10 years ago, was it?
30.
She's saying 30.
30 years ago.
If you're
And
throwing
just-
chemicals in.
Now, where would we make that inquiry?
you could make it to the health agent, but she'd have to probably dig files, I don't know.
And then they would
Yep.
spray. They would come down a couple nights later and spray.
Mosquito pellets. I never even-
Yeah.
Mosquito control
The
district can
larvae.
do pretty much whatever they want when it comes to.
They put in that puddle.
Okay, yes.
Anna Pop, I live at 41 Highland Ave.
Pop.
Pop, P as in Peter, O Peter, Peter.
Okay. What's your address? 41.
41. I am new at this. This is my first time, so I hope I'm not wasting your time with this. It was my understanding, I looked at the Mass Association of Conservation Commissions to figure out what it is you guys do. I wanted to give myself kind of a crash course. Clearly that's not gonna happen. You guys have to learn a lot. But I was heartened to see that it says that you have the responsibility and the charge for protection, preservation, and that you have some enforcement. Now I live on the north side of the street. As I was doing my research, I came up on a hazard mitigation report that was prepared by the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission for 2015. And while this doesn't directly relate, it did list that there are 5 repetitive loss properties in Easthampton. And they defined repetitive loss as having 2 or more claims of $1,000 or more within 10 years, although you have to fall within the National Floodplain Insurance. If my house did, there would be 6 repetitive loss properties in Easthampton. Keeping up with the Joneses in our neighborhood, it's not about trucks, it's not about boats, it's not about where you go to college. It's who's got a sump pump, who's got a generator. This is how we live. And granted, this isn't famine, this isn't disease, but it's real and it's constant. When we go on vacation, are we gonna come back to a couple inches of water in our house? Many of these houses are also raised ranches, split level ranches. So that basement isn't storage. I mean, we live there. That's 1/3 of my square footage. We're also in a zone, is it a zone 2, a zone 2S? So even if he is haying, which I don't know if any of you ladies are 7 sisters, but I can tell you on my honor, if you're a 7 sister, you understand what that means. There has been no haying in there in the 6 years that I've been on this street. But if there is haying, it's a zone 2S, it's a wellhead protection, so I would ask that you at least monitor for any kind of pollution. Is that in your jurisdiction?
That is not in our jurisdiction.
Do you know who that would be?
That would be the town, that's the town's aquifer.
Okay.
There's at least 90%, and that is my ballpark estimate. That is not based on a calculation. The vast majority of Easthampton falls within the zone 2 wellhead drinking water protection zone of our wells, the Barnes Aquifer, the city's wells, all of that. So it doesn't mean you can't do things, and I don't know how it pertains to agricultural activities. Ongoing versus new, 2 separate discussions.
Right.
But it does mean that because of the sandy soils and the aquifers, that there's heightened risk.
Yes.
But that said, from the Wetlands Protection Act perspective and our purview, that pertains only to stormwater management standards and the amount of runoff that needs to be treated from impervious area prior to discharge.
I don't understand what a lot of that
I'm really
means.
sorry.
No, that's okay. But our neighborhood is really wet, and there's a big building that is theoretically coming in, and that's going to displace more water. I usually have a pond or stream in my backyard. This year, the National Drought Mitigation Center has ranked Massachusetts as being abnormally dry, so all I have is a swamp. Which again, about half of my property is generally unusable. So I have grave concerns about any activity that happens there displacing water towards my house. I'm going to ask you to look at this in a very broad perspective, larger than our immediate neighborhood, because there are other things coming in, and we need your help.
So, and I appreciate that, and I do sympathize. The north side of Highland Avenue has a very extensive red maple swamp. It's called the Red Maple Swamp. It's a large wetland area. It looks like all the houses on the north side were built within 100 feet of it, which is why all these groundwater issues, all these
Right.
water issues in
Well,
general.
The clay also.
But it still makes it,
Right.
water can't go away. So, what the commission can do when new development comes in, if it's within our jurisdiction, and is subject to the Massachusetts stormwater management standards, which talk exactly about what you're concerned with. Development, runoff, stormwater runoff from development, changes in the land, characteristics affecting outside the parcel limits, basically. So the requirements are basically that your peak development, your pre-development peak discharge rates are not exceeded by your, I'll translate, post-development peak discharge rates. So basically, you don't have more water running off after than you did before.
But we don't have a before measurement, do we now?
You do now. It is the baseline
Well,
of what it is now.
But
it's only
but there's a month and a half of work that's been going on.
But there's no impervious area. I understand that it's not simple. And
No, I know that.
Impervious means like rooftops,
pavement, concrete.
Stuff that water absolutely cannot get through. That's, okay, just wanted to
everybody
just make sure you understood what that.
Yeah, it's still dirt on the site, so it still drains.
No, really. Not in this neighborhood.
Theoretically.
Yeah.
I mean, it drains really slow because it's split.
But I'm asking you to take that into consideration about how it drains and what it does. I mean, our land is wet, and what, the last floodplain map was put out the year I started kindergarten.
No, our county's been updated.
Where is that? Because
online.
I'm a librarian and I have not been able to find that.
FEMA. Go to the FEMA products. FEMA. Just Google FEMA store online.
Okay.
And it's electronic.
I wonder why I didn't come up with anything new. I was on all government websites. That's bizarre.
So Hampshire County was updated, wasn't it? Or is it just Hamden? I hope I'm not misspeaking.
I think it's just Hamden.
Is it just Hamden? I'm
Hampshire's
sorry.
been-
You still have to go to the FEMA store, and it's all the cruddy old maps that are black and white, basically.
And from 1979? As much as I've changed, I'm sure Easthampton has changed.
It's
I started kindergarten that year. A long time ago.
Sorry, they took care of Hamden County first.
Yeah. Pay attention to what's going on. I don't know who this man is. He means nothing to me, but he's not being neighborly and he's not following the rules. And I know neighborly is not within your jurisdiction, rules are.
And if there is something within our jurisdiction, then we will be able to pursue it.
Thank you.
Right.
If he does something up by Route 10, it's not within our jurisdiction.
That's not up by Route 10.
No, as an if.
Right.
You know, these are all properties that he owns. We don't have jurisdiction over everything he does,
I
or
understand
anybody
that.
in general.
And my issue isn't with him. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm bad at interrupting.
I do the same.
My issue is not with him, it's with the water and the development. And what does that mean to me? This is my first home. Moving sucks. I would really like to not have to do this again anytime soon. So please do keep an eye on what's going on there and see if we can't get some, I don't know who we pressure to get new flood maps, but I think new measurements need to be taken of what's going on in our neighborhood.
Thank you.
I have a question, and it might be an easy one this time.
Can we
Just
name
remind
and-
us.
I'm sorry, Susan Lever, 25 Highland Avenue.
Thank you.
Under your jurisdiction, and I guess this is just a question, is it legal for somebody to go in with a backhoe and pull out an area of cattails in a wet area?
It depends. And I hate that answer, and I know it's not a good answer. If it is an area subject to Wetlands Protection Act jurisdiction, then no. If it's not subject to jurisdiction because it doesn't meet a definition, it is not within our purview to pursue that. So if it is, for the sake of discussion, if it is an isolated wetland, an isolated vegetated wetland, the Wetlands Protection Act does not exert jurisdiction over isolated vegetated wetlands. They have to
So
be-
it is legal under
So
that scenario.
it would not be within our purview. It would
Okay.
fall under 401 of Clean Water Act.
Okay, which is not
Or
our
404,
jurisdiction.
which is not our jurisdiction. There are other regulatory agencies.
Yeah, who do
So
I
it would
call?
either be Mass DEP under 401,
Okay.
or the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers New England District under 404. But those are, we don't have a bylaw, we don't have an ordinance relative to pertaining to wetlands that is any more stringent at all, that is what we could use to make something more stringent than the state level of protection.
Has there been any movement to do so since the master plan? I mean, 64% of people said to preserve what we've got. Has there been any activity towards that for the constituency?
Not recently.
Well,
We have a
there,
draft.
there was a
There
local
was,
wetlands ordinance
and it
that
got
was,
yanked.
that got yanked by,
This was when Easthampton was still a town.
yeah,
Do you?
well, I don't know.
I wasn't,
So,
I know how
I
long
wasn't
you've been
part of
involved
that,
in
I
the
wasn't part of that,
municipality.
well, I was on town meeting, but I wasn't part of that decision.
yeah,
It wouldn't have, they would've got a no vote.
I'd like to play it at a time.
So, there was something, and then it was taken away.
You could
and-
actually look in the general ordinances, I think there's probably a date, because there's still a section in the general ordinances of where it was located, and I think there's a date of when it was voted out.
Mhm.
I understand that you guys have these parameters.
Mhm.
I get that. I also understand that you guys know he found out there was gonna be a site view, hayseed got spread. Is there anything, since there's all of these other things that everybody's checking on now, is there anything that we can do to just have him stop for right now till we all do our homework?
The burden of proof is on the people making the accusation. And this commission doesn't have the resources to do that, and that's why we're talking about pulling in DEP.
What do you mean by resources? I don't understand.
We have no staff, we can't spend our budget on this, as far as I understand.
Can I just ask why not?
Because those are the rules. Those are the ridiculous rules governing how we can spend our $2,000 a year measly budget. We have asked repeatedly for even a part-time conservation agent who could be in the city during normal business hours.
Just for the record, the commission with the administration did apply for a grant to have a shared conservation agent with the town of Southampton. And when the new governor's administration came in and the whole budget got restructured, the entire grant program was completely slashed. And so the opportunity that we had to apply for a grant for the staff position was eliminated when the governor's administration withdrew that grant program completely. So just for clarification.
So that's what I mean, and it's obviously very frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a couple different pools of money. One is related to the Echo Dale parcels, I believe, a certain amount for maintenance and improvement of those. There's another pot that we get in fees from our Wetland Protection Act work.
That can only be used to.
Yeah.
Only be used to.
I don't know what it can only be used for exactly.
The review of applications, I believe.
Okay.
So we could hire a consultant to review an application.
Yeah. And then there's the budget that we get from the city, which is just a couple $1,000s a year, and there's part for education and part for travel.
Sure.
You know, and
Postage.
yeah, and I forget what the categories are, but even just to hire if we were to hire a wetland scientist to, to try and look at some maps and come up with these issues, it would be a few $1,000s and beyond what we would be able to do.
And that's not even, and I do want to get to both of you, and that's not even a hydrology study.
Right.
To figure out what water is doing there. And I will step back and say, it is not, I understand all your concerns, and that's the kind of study that someone would do if they're evaluating changes in the area. It's not something that, the commission can take on, because we can't take that on in every instance across town.
I just wanted to understand.
So.
If just so we can, again, I'm not trying to certainly cut the resident short, because, I'd let him speak all night if it was my plan.
We are gonna move on soon.
I mean, I think, what I guess I'd like to see the board do is to bring in the western region of DEP. I think it's just enough to have the more complete or with their investigation. That's nothing against your particular board. It just seems like there's a lot of questions that going back. And even the 2 years, as you mentioned, it was 2 years ago that this came in front, and it was a little different in that it was a lot of yards and yards and yards of fill that were being brought in, mainly up by Northampton Street, and then a little further down. Most of the concerns here, I'm not a butter to this particular problem down that they're talking about. I know the pond came up last time, but a lot of it, I want to say the planner and the city engineer maybe came out the last time because no hay was seeded out by Northampton Street, but a little was seeded by where the horse barn is, and he may have even, I think he's been out there a couple times haying, but not, again, I don't know down below. This is like sort of like 3 parcels. So again, it's just, there's been so much that's gone on in that area. I think it would just be, to me, it would make everyone feel at least, again, like Attorney Hagan said, if he's doing everything within his rights, that's certainly within his rights, and we have no problem with it. But I guess we'd like to at least see, that it's thoroughly investigated, so that if he isn't, again, just to try to find out where it really lies. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Just to go back over to where we are with what information has been brought forward to your eyes from what we saw from our point of view is, will you go back and will you talk to him and ask him?
I am going to, don't know that we have the investigatory abilities.
Well, then my question would be, what do we do now?
I would say, if you're concerned, voice that concern directly to DEP Western Region. The more, I would imagine, the more people expressing this concern, the likelier it is that they will pursue at least a preliminary evaluation. I don't know, again, that's a staff that has been reduced as well because of the early retirement packages that everyone offered. I know. So again, but
would your board at least be supportive of that? In other words, if they call, because I know how the state works, they're going to call the local conservation commission and they're going to say, is this something you want us to get involved in, or are you comfortable dealing with yourself? And I guess this is what the residents would like to see: is are you committed to the state coming in and taking a look at it if they're willing to come in? I know you can't order the state to do that. You can't order the state to do that.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, based on what I saw before this meeting, like I said, I didn't really have that many concerns. I mean, obviously, everybody has come to us with their, with stories of what used to be there and what's gone on and everything like that. But relative to our jurisdiction, it didn't really seem like there had been a problem. But now I think between what people have been saying tonight, I would definitely be interested to see what Mass DEP could come up with and would have to say, because just maybe something more that has gone on here over a longer period of time than what I've been able to see myself.
Well, I think that's the point, and I know I keep using that word cumulative, but like Anna said, every single year another resident is having to put in a sump pump. Every single year. Last year I had 4 inches of water in my basement. Now, when somebody hears that, now we're talking about a mold issue, now we're talking about a public health thing, and we get mold in our neighborhood, our houses are no longer available. And somebody needs to be able to do something, because we keep saying the same thing over and over and over again. Somebody's got to stop the building that's creating a greater health hazard.
My one response to that, and again, this is not really commission jurisdiction, but I'll just say that a lot of this construction is happening downhill of where you are.
It's also right.
So
right.
If stuff like that happens, in fact, if there was a drainage channel that drained that pond, it probably helped a lot of homes out in your area versus. Because it's draining away from your neighborhood.
Well, I can tell you when it really rained the other day.
I don't have any empirical proof of that. I'm just hypothesizing as an engineer, is saying you may go after him. We may find that he did something wrong and he has to fix it and put a pond back there. But be prepared that it might not fix a darn thing in your basements.
I can tell you when it really rained the other day, the Hagans live across the street from me. the water just comes right down that hill because I'm downhill from the Hagens. I'm downhill from this land.
Okay.
The water's coming right down there and it's coming right into my front yard.
I have to agree with what she says because in between my house and my neighbor's house, when it rains profusely out there, the water comes from that field and comes right down, right towards her house. But see, I go back to what I wanted to reiterate before. I think I can say this for everybody. Our concern is that what's being done is being done legal. And I don't think it is. And there's rumors out there of what he wants to do, and I'm not gonna bring those up because there's no plans on board. But I did have one other question. That grading around the back edge of where it goes down towards the river? Well, yeah, the canal's further down, but right behind my house, where you saw that trench, in that him doing those grading, should there be, bales of hay or stop soil from, because those are big piles of dirt, and if it rains, it's, that was a question I wanted to ask earlier.
I mean, that's a lot of what I was looking for were signs of, issues, at least considering.
Well, it's only been there for a week and a half.
Yeah.
That dirt's only been there for a week and a half, and a lot of that dirt that's in those piles is what he took out of the pond. But I was just saying, because you go to construction sites, they have to put up the bales and everything to keep, residue out.
I mean,
it depends on it depends on good housekeeping practices and what regulations apply to someone.
It's also big dry.
If he was in front of us for, a stormwater permit or for, wetlands permit, then, we want to see those on the plans and everything. But that's not something that's, like it seems like he's proceeding as if it's agriculture. And you wouldn't tend to do that around a farm field.
Right. All evidence on the site that we saw was that it was being used as agriculture.
Yeah,
Well, we hope we brought you some light to the fact that it's not been used as agriculture. That's the other. I think we proved that it hasn't been because it hasn't been hayed. Like she said, she's been here for over 5 years, and I want to say 8 or whatever. That it has not been hayed. It has in the past, but that was a long, long time ago. It hasn't since then.
So when I was on site, I walked the perimeter and looked for signs of exactly what you're talking about, soil and things.
There was a heavy rainstorm on Saturday. We didn't see.
Yeah, we didn't
see that effect.
We didn't see that there had been an effect. If there was an effect, if something happened in the future, then
it would have to affect an area subject to our jurisdiction.
Right.
Either under the Wetlands Protection Act or the Stormwater Ordinance.
Right. And if it's an agricultural activity and something like that happens, it's still exempt.
Even bad agricultural practices, and I'm not saying this is good, bad, is or is not. In general, even bad agricultural practices are considered exempt if they're considered agricultural.
I understand what you're saying. I just don't see it happening that way. That's what I'm saying. If you were to go back and address to him what he told you, when we are the ones that are there 24/7 abutting our property and we see what's going on. That's what I'm expressing to you. What he's told you is not true. That's what I'm saying. And want to know if what he's doing is legal.
So to recap then, I think what we need to do, when I say we, I'm not saying just the commission, but you as well, need to contact Mass DEP.
But can I ask, is there that's what I was going to ask Melissa, is there a name, a person we should contact?
You could contact Mark Stinson, you could contact David Fowlis, you could contact David Kipp, Foulis.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Foulis. David.
And was first name on that?
David.
David.
You could contact, those are the two that come to mind right off the top.
Yeah,
Mark is the regional circuit rider. His position with DEP is outreach with all the Western region communities. David is a senior review analyst.
So that gives us, it's just easier, because there's over 30 neighbors, make it easier to call.
And just to be clear, is the board you're gonna contact them too also? Okay.
We will
okay,
also
great,
contact
thank you.
them.
Question, just one question. He's still working there. Since you've been there, he was there this weekend, he was there last week. As a landscaper, when I put seed down, I'm done running on the ground. I don't know what's going on, I'm not looking, but is there anything you as a committee, can you do anything to like put a temporary, just a temporary stop, I guess that's what it is.
Or check
Until
on it down the
we
line and be
contact our
like, yeah,
people.
I think we'll contact DEP first,
Okay.
and see what support or lead they can provide. And then we'll just have to revisit this discussion.
Who knows, though, we could if we couldn't establish jurisdiction.
Right, that's the tricky thing, we can't, and it's not just this particular case, it's in general, I would never want to issue a cease and desist order that I'm not prepared to back up with a very tight enforcement action, which we've done in recent years.
Yeah.
And it's tricky, just, you know, we've said it before, even just because it's water, doesn't automatically make it a Wetlands Protection Act issue. Other things may, but not all water is within our jurisdiction.
I have a Mayflower growing in the backyard for the first time.
Canada Mayflower?
I have a Mayflower.
That's an upland, if it's Canada Mayflower, it's an upland species, so. Yeah.
I'm very happy, I'm pumped.
And will you check with public health, because that was a big area.
We will, we have it as a to-do, to contact the health, we'll contact the city's health agent and start there, and hopefully she can do a records review.
Is there, does Hampshire County, do they or did they have a mosquito control district? No.
Anyone who wants to?
Can I just go through actions before we vote this? Are we closed to the public at this point?
Are there any further comments before we review our actions? Thank you.
Okay, so now the hearing is closed to the public. All right, so we're gonna, sorry, whatever, comment period is closed to the public. So, actions. Commission will contact the Board of Health regarding historical mosquito treatment control.
Chris, I think you need a sugar pill or something.
Yeah, I'm getting there. Getting there.
Someone get that man a lifesaver.
Can we contact the Board of Health and ask them, what's this about?
So was this an actual maintained farm at one point?
Oh yeah, it was definitely an active. Yeah, at one point. It may not have been in the past 5 years, that's debatable. But, oh, it has been in the past. All right, so second action, commission to contact Mass DEP to get them involved. The residents will also contact Mass DEP. Or I'll say butters. Well, does it have to be butters or residents? Butters or anyone.
It can be any concerned citizen.
Neighbors, concerned citizens will contact Mass DEP.
Do you want to divvy these tasks up, Melissa, or do you want to tackle them all yourself?
Well, there's really, I mean.
Talk to the health.
Thank you.
Who will?
I will call DEP.
Okay, so Commissioner Ryan will contact the Board of Health. Commissioner Cody to contact Mass DEP. Okay? And Butters contact Mass DEP. Is there any other actions I may have missed? Okay. Great. Thank you, everybody.
Do you want to keep those photos?
Okay. I think we should,
I guess.
for the files.
What about this one? Do we need important relations?
I think it's just a definition of the backyard. It's not
All
really,
right,
it's not just like.
thank you all for taking the time to come in and speak. Thank you.
I think we don't need this one because it's not the site.
Is that's your backyard, right? I don't think you want that.
No problem.
I've seen that one before.
Well, I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Out of your backyard.
Really?
I have it on my desk.
You're really
Yes. Yes.
Already expressed any concern on open maps?
Okay. Just want to know that you guys made me nervous, so thank you very much for what you're doing.
All right.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to continue the meeting, so.
All right.
Can you
take it as always?
Move into the hallway.
Mrs. Lieber?
We can email the Conservation Commission.
Conservation at
Or you could call this office, or you could just tell me what time and I can call you.
Okay.
How
Off the
about
record.
I work full-time, I can't be available.
Thank you. Before I leave, I work
Thank
with
you.
1,600 libraries across the state.
You're like
So
the
if you
coolest
need,
librarian ever.
I am. So if you need,
I'm gonna give this to you. Maps.
Why did, what, just, has it got a bear on it?
no.
No.
Then I'm,
But you can find pictures for it. Oh wait, you're not a reference librarian, never mind.
No, I am a reference librarian. I'm just an aggrandized one. But what I could certainly
I'm like,
give you
what's the
a
library to the
qualified
bears, huh?
referral
Thank
to
you.
people who might be able to help you. I mean, you have your own connections, but so do I.
Thank you so much for your time and
You're gonna,
coming
you know
out.
what?
thank you.
Your head's gonna hit that.
Okay.
Here.
I'll do it, you sit down.
All right, continuing.
All right, we're gonna.
Record that.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
like,
where am I?
I don't know. What's the problem
Did you just
with
close the door, John?
Is he part of the
It
meeting?
was all
or-
I
sorts
don't
of
know.
loud.
Why don't you go invite him in,
Okay,
Jay?
so
Loud
moving
noises in the
on,
hallway.
moving on. Can
Overruled.
we do, meeting minutes approval, August 10th, 2015. Do we have a copy of the minutes?
Right here. Anyone look at them?
Uh,
They incorporate Melissa's comments.
Thank you.
I'll move to the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor? In
Aye.
favor. So moved.
Did you zoom through the beginning?
No, we
No,
haven't.
just
You- No, we went.
Right to the meat.
Meat.
Fun.
Okay, we have no further public concerns, non-agenda items, we have no public hearings or meetings, we have no requests for certificates of compliance, though I will ask if there's been any further contact with
Hendrick Street.
Dan Daigle?
99?
I've sent
Yeah.
him an email. I contacted him at one point and he's never
Fine.
responded.
Done.
Yeah.
Okay, it's great.
He has not responded.
We have no emergency certifications, we have no further information to add regarding 37 South Street. Mount Tom Estates, so we're on to compliance updates, active projects, open permits, Mount Tom Estates.
So they have submitted a request for a 1-year extension to their order of conditions, and it's right here. Peter Levesque of Wetland Consultants submitted a request for a 1-year extension to their order of
So
conditions.
this discussion will be on our September 14th meeting
Okay.
agenda, because this was submitted a week ago.
Yep.
So,
What was the date again? September?
it was submitted 14th.
Yep, but it'll be on our September
14th
Sorry, I'm
meeting
sorry.
agenda.
Okay.
And it's a what year? 1-year extension.
1 year, just 1 year. They were in
Okay.
their last unit.
So the important thing is that this was received well in advance of the 30 days prior to the date of expiration. So, no problems.
Good.
Okay. Paul Street Extension, Gillian Estates.
There is the bi-weekly,
Terry, Dan, here we go.
the silt sack looks like it's prepared.
Great. So this must be lot 3 or further. Site construction. Chris, would you be so kind? Lot number 2, never mind. I'll read all the words.
All right, there you go. Now, Dan, did you contact them about getting the catch basins cleaned out or anything like that, or we had talked about?
No, I just talked to them about the sediment catcher.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's
it's
fixed.
Some gloves. Yeah, I think I need a life
Yeah,
saving.
yeah.
The sediment catching thing of all.
The daily
More
bags.
silt sacks.
Somebody get me a power bar.
Seriously, I think we all need a little boost. Okay, thank you. Pleasant Street Mills.
We're actively constructing things.
Constructioning
things.
Jessica gets one too.
That is my new favorite word.
Constructioning things?
Yes, constructioning.
So the first segment of the retaining wall is up. They're gonna be installing stormwater infrastructure over the next couple of weeks. And then once the first segment of stormwater that goes behind that first segment of retaining wall is installed, then they'll move down to working on the second segment of the retaining wall, which goes all the way down to Eastworks.
Okay.
Apropos of nothing subject to our jurisdiction. Are
Is
there
the bike
any?
trail open?
No, I know it is.
Okay.
Are there any bike racks going in around Lower Mill Pond Park?
There are bike racks that we are going to be installing. I don't know exactly the location at this point, but there will be.
Okay.
That
racks
makes
being-
very good sense.
Yes.
Okay.
So just to wrap up, the action that we still had on from our last agenda, our last meeting was Commissioner Kraus, city planner, about process of removing the sediment control devices.
We did.
You all gave
All
me
set.
the all clear. So our contractor was on vacation last week, so I'll make sure that,
Okay.
I shouldn't be allowed to do that during the summer.
that,
That's a bold contract.
we all deserve a vacation with our families.
We do.
In January.
Most contractors
Yeah.
don't take them during this construction season.
So, I'll check in on that.
Thank
Okay.
you.
See where it's at.
No updates on Glendale, Ladville, West Pomeroy. Nashmonic Mills, 15 Cottage
Haven't
Street.
seen any activity of planting or anything like that.
Promenade Park, we issued a certificate of compliance,
Probably take
so
that
Filed with the
that is
registry.
gonna
Did
come
I send it
right
to you?
off.
Yeah,
I emailed it to you, didn't I?
It's
Scanned it and
emails.
emailed it?
yeah, everything's,
Okay.
yeah,
So
we're
you
good
have a
there.
copy of it now.
No updates on the Oxbow. Town Beach, Nashmonic Pond, we have email.
Many much emails. Many much moosin'.
Just for that,
Town
You
Beach.
read that.
Okay, so I have on here,
please read for updates.
weekly reports, okay, I don't have any, never mind. I thought I,
We've received an update from Office of Boating and Fishing Access.
gosh, I thought I fixed
Fishing and
that.
Boating Access.
Yeah, so at our last meeting, we talked, I'd done a quick site visit and looked at how things shaped up, and I was surprised to see riprap and all the swales and such things.
I haven't been keeping abreast of that project at all, so I love that you're looking at me, but I really don't really know
Okay.
much about it.
We're informing you.
Yes, so, and so we discussed at the last meeting how the swales and such things are full of riprap, and the
Such
plans,
things.
the plans showed them being vegetated and such.
They were
Pervious.
bioretention-ish swales, they were vegetated swales, they were not
To have
armored
riprap in
swales. And they
Right.
did not have riprap armoring,
In the plans, they
yeah.
were not.
We pull up the plans.
So the question is that, is that integral to compliance with stormwater? Was the absence of riprap
Sorry.
integral to the stormwater design and its approval?
We would have
or-
approved it either way.
Right, would we have approved it either way? I believe what's
So-
mentioned there is
so
efforts
this-
to vegetate on top of it.
Well, no, this is just an update email from Terry Smith to the city saying that they completed it. And I had emailed Terry to see what why it was riprap and not vegetated. And his response was, well, we decided that it would be better if it was riprap, and that it'll vegetate in eventually, I think. And so I responded saying, well, it's not what we permitted.
Well,
Or-
I guess my question is, are they gonna be able to convey water adequately? Or as designed?
So why don't you, do you want me to contact him and ask him to come to the next meeting to see if he can explain some of this stuff?
Well, I'd asked him to come tonight. I didn't get a response. I guess he's on vacation or something.
It's the end of August before school, come on people, everybody's on vacation.
You're right, everybody is on vacation except us.
I'm going on Wednesday. So,
Does the school start on Tuesday?
so do you want me to follow up with another email to him and ask for him to attend the next meeting, which is
If he could
the
attend the
Yeah.
September
7th,
14th meeting,
right, cause the
Because
7th
of the
is a
holiday.
Labor Day, so
And it's also
September 14th?
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I guess if there's anything he can provide in writing prior to that, to maybe compare and contrast.
Yep. I think
First
what
of
I,
all,
Hold on,
Review
so
and
this is in regards to riprap
In swales.
in the swales, which were supposed to be vegetated
yep.
And such.
and such.
And I think in the correspondence that we had, what I said that is, if they got some topsoil and spread it in and seeded it, then that would probably be fine. I guess my concern,
Seeded it with what?
vegetated.
Grass or some sort of.
Well, I mean, the plans,
that's it. It's
the plans say
showed.
grass.
They just say grass?
That's all it is.
Oh, okay.
You
Well,
know.
then I think, there's a rain garden there, isn't
There
there?
was supposed to be a rain garden.
It says grass.
Bioretention. I think it wasn't a rain garden, it was a bioretention area.
Yeah, bioretention area, yeah.
And a rain garden is kind of a generic term.
I think it might have been calling them rain garden when we were talking about it, but it actually did not say.
Does it say rain garden on there?
It says bioretention basin.
It's got it says healthy dense grass coming down slopes, and then the bottom says just fine shredded hardwood mulch. So I guess it was not.
A rain garden. Well, but it didn't
It's
say
called it a
rain
bioretention basin.
It's rain garden adjacent. It's close, but not really.
Okay.
So-
I'll ask him to come to the next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
and
just
ask
wanna
him to
get this
provide some
sorted
sort
out.
of reason why the plan changed from grass to riprap. Okay.
Okay.
There's a little erosion along the side of the road. They haven't paved yet, but it's not getting to the pond. It's not even
Okay.
getting to.
But did they take the turbidity curtain out?
No, it's still in there.
Okay.
So there's still straw wattle
Okay.
blocking it, so it's not bad. But
Okay. So I would imagine the paving will happen when Terry gets back from vacation?
Well, I think the way that the project was budgeted out is that a portion of it was to happen before June 30th.
Right.
And then he needed, after the new fiscal year, he had talked about paving sometime in like September,
Yep.
October, if
That's
I'm
what it
remembering
was.
correctly,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So, sometime before the plants closed, but
Mhm.
wasn't in the dead heat of
Right,
summer.
because they were gonna do like a bunch at once or something, I think. They were
Right.
gonna do a big batch.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, he says in whatever email this is, he expects paving in early October.
Okay.
Okay.
Lathrop, you went
So I went on
there
a site visit,
on the 17th?
yeah. Is it the 17th? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the
a week
Monday.
ago.
Just fix that. Oh, no, I'm sorry, yeah, so I went on the 17th, they finished the work the previous Friday, the 14th. They, for the 2015 work year, they only had a certain amount of funding and they used it all up in like a month and then they were done. So they only got to 2 sites, so if you remember when we were on our site visit, there was A, B, C, and D, they only got to A and B. A was that vernal pool and B was the big open field behind the houses. So
The
they.
first 2 sites that we saw?
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm. So they only got to those areas and they cleaned out, they did some work. They have provided us, to our conservation site, they provided like a daily log of what they removed.
Great.
Yeah, and the site looks good. I mean, I honestly didn't see much change in either location. They almost found nothing down by the vernal pool because it was so dark in that area, so there was almost nothing to remove there. But
Great.
they'll get funding and start again next year. And I told her to just send us a quick email to let us know when they're going to start.
One thing to keep in mind, and I don't know what the proposal will be, if there will be one, is there's an article in the paper about expansions.
There's no land for them to expand on. If they've actually filed their open space restriction like they were supposed to with under the first build out, there's nothing left to build on.
So I'm just bringing this up, and Jess is aware of it, that there was an article in the paper about expansions of the Northampton and Easthampton campuses. There are rules about multiple orders of conditions on for properties, but very specifically, that pertains to overlapping geographic footprints. So there could be another order, my understanding is there could be another order of conditions as long as that footprint didn't overlap with one of the areas we've already approved, unless they close out the current order.
No, it wouldn't matter for this because all the sites are actually in wetlands.
Or near wetlands,
Yeah.
so it's just something to keep in mind depending on whose mind is most active if something were to come up.
Okay.
Okay, PCT, Mutterfield, they recorded their order, no other updates,
No
so.
updates.
Okay, done, anything, oh wait, we have to go. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Cause there was that email from Fish and Wildlife Service about water chestnut removal, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a little snarky, so we just gonna let it lie? I just wanna.
Is it from us or to us?
No.
To you.
I think
Let it lie?
It was an emergency request for a certificate.
You guys denied it.
Yeah.
And she got snarky about it, and that's it. Okay, so, and she's supposed to file something at some
She
point,
can
but
file something with DEP and
Okay.
DEP can issue the emergency cert.
Okay.
I understand it's.
I just wanna be clear in case any calls come to my office on what the response is.
The answer is the commission did not feel that it met the regulatory criteria
For an
of a
emergency.
threat to public health or safety
Right.
for an emergency certification.
So the commission told her that she could file the appropriate paperwork, or alternatively,
Or-
she could go to
Right.
DEP
Mhm.
to
She
get
said
the
she didn't
cert.
have time
Okay.
for that.
Yeah.
But
And that was it.
I thought I did see something either on the website or in the news that the National Pond Steering Committee approved such of a project. So I don't know if it was the same one she came to us for, and then she just went to them, or if it's
Well, then we have a
something
problem.
different.
Because they don't have regulatory authority to authorize work in National Pond.
Okay, so maybe.
But that's something to check up on. I can certainly send
There
you.
was something in the news about
check the
a
website
Florence
real quick.
Savings Bank grant to
Yes.
the National Pond
Yes, yes,
for
yes, yes.
aquatic vegetation management.
okay.
But they did say in it
But
that they were gonna
do
pull.
know that they understand they need permitting for
Permitting,
that.
right.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, that was
So that one,
Yeah, yeah.
hopefully
Next
that was
year.
it.
Hopefully.
So this is, okay, that needs to.
So I don't need to add anything to the minutes on that, or should I?
Mr. Buttrick, forest cutting plan, off Hendrick Street. Natural Heritage's comments were, that the work be done between any off-road operation of motorized vehicle shall occur only during, the time period beginning November 1 and ending March 31 of any year, which basically means when the ground is frozen and isn't gonna affect wetlands anyway. Which project is this? It was a forest cutting plan, which is an agriculturally exempt activity. Provided,
What's the address on that?
it's Hendrick Street. There's a map, that's their mailing address. The parcel, there's a parcel map-ish
Is this for the minutes?
there.
Is it from, it's from, Tam, is this for the minutes, isn't it?
Yeah, I kind of zoned a little bit there, so.
It's correspondence, so.
Do you need a banana?
No,
More
but
juice?
I just have no idea what we're talking about all of a sudden. 1500 Street.
It's from storm damage, right?
No.
Oh,
This
it's
is,
not.
well, this is a forest cutting plan, this is for forestry.
But I thought, it had
This
something
is-
to do with cleaning up from after the microburst.
That's a different one.
That's
Okay.
a different one.
It's all right.
It's okay.
Confusing.
Harvest of all, no, you're right, harvest of all merchantable, is that a word? Wood material felled or severely damaged by the microburst of 2014, capital M, microburst of 2014.
The
Standing trees with
microburst.
1/3 of their crown intact, which is 2 words apparently, will be retained.
That's one enough.
Sorry,
Retained.
clearly past the limit.
So can I just call maybe it's Fish and Wildlife about this bat stuff?
Yeah.
Because I still have no idea.
Did you get a bat?
Yeah.
So
okay,
the
just bat
northern,
survey.
northern long-eared bat, like the entire state, any living or dead
Like
standing
pretty much
tree
the most, yeah.
is considered potential roost
For a bat.
habitat for the northern long-eared bat,
Uh-huh.
which has been most affected by white nose syndrome.
But there is a lot
Okay.
of roost sites.
But there are no, to my knowledge, there are no mapped hibernacula in this area.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean it's not potential or actual roosting habitat. It just means the further you get from a mapped hibernacula, the less likely it is to be.
I just don't know where
But
they are,
go
so.
and call. So anywhere they're mapped by natural heritage is a hibernacula.
Where can you find these maps?
Online, you have to go to the species and look at the little. It's not a great map, but you can look at the species fact sheet,
Okay, yeah.
and it.
So you're gonna
Colleen is going to-
determine if there's a
Yeah.
bat in northern long hair.
What a fabulous time to have a huge blowdown in your town.
Yeah,
Can you
right.
recycle the envelope
Right
for me,
in the-
please?
no,
Right,
no,
so
no.
I actually got that, so,
Bad decides to get this.
do we wanna mention at all anybody with your discussion with the chestnuts? Did we?
Water chestnut? No, that's fine. I just saw the
Okay.
email come through and there was no, I know. Deep breath, count to 10.
Okay.
I just wanted to know
Okay.
This is
how to
actually-
respond if it circled back and I
Gotcha.
needed to, that's all.
Is that federal fish and wildlife?
That is federal fish and wildlife.
I've never been
Natural
able to-
heritage is, Corps of Engineers will coordinate with federal fish and wildlife on any application, which is why we talked about it in PB.
Right. No, I'm talking about the
Please.
water chestnut now, I'm not talking about
Oh, I don't know who that is. Mr. Buttrick.
I've never been able to figure out if federal agencies are subject to Wetlands Protection Act jurisdiction. Hey, look at that. Have you,
Pass it
Melissa?
down. Take the one that's yours.
Yes. You've never talked to them?
I've never been able to figure out if federal agency actions are subject to Wetlands Protection Act jurisdiction.
I don't believe they are.
So if
I
it's-
don't believe,
So if it's federal fish and wildlife, they could have just been being nice to.
Are they, oh, good point, although they got
Flash
determinations
Your
historically.
parent never-
Yeah, I mean, what I found in the past is that they will come to the locals and be nice and apply, and then if they find trouble, then they just go and do it anyway.
That's their,
So if
that's
there was a site,
their
they had to
prerogative.
do
Yeah.
surveys, and if there was
I
gaps on the
was not
locations,
comfortable
they might
setting
not
the
be able to do
precedent
their
that
cutting plan.
Makes
that
sense.
that
could, like,
met the criteria that's
further
supposed to
our
be
power,
reserved
you
for
know?
actual threats to public health and safety, like broken
Oh, I understand.
sewer lines or washouts or,
Yep,
okay.
Wait,
So these are,
I'm with you. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that if they
It's just
go and do
weird.
it anyways.
To put in your wallet so people think you're important.
do we get to go to the
this is like a
conference?
badge.
No, it's just
We
your-
still have to pay to go to the conference.
It's
Oh, man,
honestly
I
just
thought
like,
it
it's
was
your
like
membership.
discounts,
You're
then.
now a
There's
member.
money in your
Our
budget.
budget for education.
There
so you
is,
should
there's
use
a
it.
fall conference, and isn't it usually in Northampton? Anyway, we can look into that. Okay, just, oh, good gracious, really?
Don't lose it.
It's-
No, not more junk.
No,
Oh,
it's-
no, no.
Guys, the
It's-
toolkit, the Paying Your Balance
sustain-
Sustainability Toolkit.
We got one too.
It's fancy.
Well, maybe
Who
we're
wants to look
still
at it
special.
first?
It's 854 pages.
We got one too.
Including a total of 160
You're not
fact
special.
sheets. Just trying to be along with 49 model bylaws, policies, and strategies.
Who wants it first?
Not me.
What is it?
I was
Did you
trying to
tell
You
tell
know
you.
what? You know what? We've already uploaded
Oh,
it to their
that
server.
was
I can put it
actually-
into a Dropbox and you can all access it.
That was what that
There
was.
you
I
go.
thought you were reading off the back of your card, like what
What?
MACC membership got you or something.
No, it's a big toolkit. It's got 116 fact sheets
Oh.
and 49 model bylaws.
I'm sorry, that's
That's
what.
It comes with
I
its
heard,
own
to
lanyard.
me a toolkit is something like you can like open up and there's like stuff inside, it's not like.
Well, you can. You just press open
Oh,
on the
jeez.
computer.
will you
But
share it with all of us?
If we,
I can if you'd like.
if there are
Guys,
sample
well,
bylaws,
let's
maybe we
just
can
take
find
this
a good
one
bylaw
for
from
now,
us.
if you want to look at. I mean,
Then I'm responsible for
There we go.
I'm good.
Cool.
it's okay. It's on a lanyard.
You can totally hold it. You can just wear it around your neck.
Right.
It's got the logo.
It's fancy. Okay.
We could integrate
Alright.
it into your actual phone so that you can't lose it.
Any additional business? Mr. Courtney, would you like to talk to us?
After the meeting's over, I'd be happy to speak with you.
I will have 5 minutes.
That's what Jessica tells me.
All right.
She's down at 2.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Remove.